What we're witnessing right now looks a whole lot like the financial assassination of the Russian Federation. It's a coordinated strategy, and it's targeting the very lifeblood of their economy. And believe it or not, it all kicked off with one single, incredibly furious reaction.
It all started with a reaction that, honestly, just didn't add up. After watching dozens of his prized warships sink to the bottom of the Black Sea, Vladimir Putin, he said nothing. But then, after one specific attack on December 19th, he was on camera, visibly shaking with rage, just roaring about revenge. Something about this one strike was completely different. So that's the big question we're digging into here. Why did this one attack get under his skin so much? Well, the answer isn't about military strategy. It's about money. A whole lot of it.
To really get this, we've got to start by looking out at sea. Because this strike didn't just sink some random ship. It was a calculated shot aimed at cutting the main artery of the entire Russian economy. You see, for years now, Russia has been leaning on this thing called the Shadow Fleet. Just think of it like a ghost armada of old, rusty tankers. They're uninsured, unregulated, and they operate in the dark to keep Russia's oil money flowing, dodging sanctions all the way. This fleet has been Moscow's economic lifeline.
The target that day was a tanker named the Kandil. Now, on paper, it's just another vessel, but in reality, it was a critical bridge for Russia's cash flow. And get this, the location of the strike is key. It happened 2,000 kilometers away in the Mediterranean, nowhere near the main conflict zone.
The message they sent couldn't have been clearer. By hitting a target this far out, the strike basically declared that there is no safe harbor, no corner of the ocean where Russia's money is safe. The entire Shadow Fleet was officially put on notice.
But the strategy didn't just stop at the water's edge. Not even close. At the exact same time, a second, devastating economic front was opened up deep inside Russia's industrial heartland.
This was a coordinated 1-2 punch. The strike at sea was aimed squarely at oil revenue. The other, on land, was going after fertilizer revenue. This wasn't random at all. It was a systematic dismantling of Russia's top two income streams.
Now, that target on land was the Togliatti Azot factory, a gigantic ammonia producer. This place was basically Russia's economic plan B. You see, with oil money getting squeezed, the Kremlin's backup plan was to flood the market with chemical and fertilizer exports. Well, this one strike completely torched that escape plan.
So you see, these individual attacks, they're really just pieces of a much bigger puzzle, a kind of strangulation strategy, one that's designed to set off a catastrophic domino effect.
And here's exactly how that domino effect works. You sink just one of these tankers, anywhere in the world. What happens next? Well, suddenly the cost to insure any ship carrying Russian oil goes through the roof. It becomes astronomical. Then good, reputable crews refuse to work on them. Who would risk it? And just like that, the entire Shadow Fleet, once Russia's greatest economic asset, becomes its biggest liability, a paralyzed Achilles heel.
But the pressure isn't just coming from these direct hits. There's another trap, a geographic and political one, that's slowly closing in the north. And this one might be an even bigger threat to Russia's oil exports.
Just let this number sink in for a second. An incredible 60% of all of Russia's seaborne oil exports, the absolute lifeblood of its economy, has to pass through one single narrow body of water, the Gulf of Finland.
And here's the kicker. At its narrowest point, that critical corridor is just 6 miles wide. 6 miles. Think about that vulnerability for a moment. The vast majority of Russia's main export squeezed through a tiny little gap.
And now, NATO member Estonia is in a position to basically be the gatekeeper of this choke point. With new security doctrines in place, they could effectively create a sea barricade, shutting down the port of St. Petersburg and pretty much wiping out a huge chunk of Russia's export capacity practically overnight.
Okay, so all of this economic warfare, it's not just happening on spreadsheets in far-off oceans. It's having a massive boomerang effect, creating real painful problems for ordinary people back on the Russian home front.
We're hearing reports of tens of thousands left without heat in minus 20-degree weather. Schools are actually closing because local governments are going bankrupt. All the while, the ruble is in freefall, and prices at the supermarket are just soaring. That unspoken contract in Russia, stability in exchange for freedom, well, it's breaking.
And how does the Kremlin explain all this chaos? Well, Vladimir Putin himself claimed these disasters were simply, and I quote, the price paid to maintain quality. It's a statement that seems completely disconnected from the reality people are living every day.
When you put all of these pieces on the table, the verdict becomes pretty clear.
The financial foundation that's holding up Putin's war machine, it's starting to crumble. It is running out of cash.
So let's just recap the damage, right? The oil export tap is now compromised, with the shadow fleet being actively hunted. The fertilizer export tap has been severed by the fire at the Togliatti factory, and land trade with Europe is basically cut off. Every major source of income is under direct and sustained attack.
Ultimately, that whole idea, that myth of Russia's sanctions-proof, unbreakable economy, well, it seems to have sunk right there in the Mediterranean, right alongside the Kendal tanker. That one event pulled back the curtain and exposed just how fragile the whole system really is.
Which leaves us with the final, absolutely critical question. Can the Russian economy actually survive this kind of total economic strangulation, or are we about to watch the final, catastrophic collapse of the ruble? That is a question the entire world is now waiting to see answered.